In this episode of the podcast, we'll be talking to Evelyn McDonald, CEO at Scottish Edge, an organisation which helps startups and scale-ups receive the funding they need to do great things. At Clear Sky, we've successfully supported previous Edge winners. These include the likes of Fresh Car Valeting, and now we're supporting Gig.ai. We help them get tech right, avoid the pitfalls that could have held them back otherwise, building the right platforms, mobile apps to help their business go bigger than they would have ever thought. By getting the right sort of funding and support, these companies can grow faster and innovate more.
So when Scottish Enterprise took the, still in retrospect, I think, strange decision not to continue with Edge and to push it out to the private sector, I was in a really good position. Because obviously I judged at Edge, I had established Young Edge, I had been working in the field of business support for many years. I knew Sir Tom Hunter, I knew Gordon Merrilees at the Royal Bank, and at the time the Royal Bank had stepped forward with funding to kick Scottish Edge off in the private sector. And I also knew the people in the government department that were supporting it with grants. So relationships is really key in that case. So I do put it down to, obviously I felt I could do the job, and luckily they felt I could as well. But I think what really helped was I knew the key people, and I had the reputation of having run the growth fund for many years by that time and understanding the challenges of running a business in Scotland. So that's essentially how I got involved, and then had to come in with the organisation having spun out and then start it from scratch again in the private sector.
So did you start off, start from scratch, what did that mean to you? Did you have to come up with a new interpretation of the vision, the values, that sort of thing? Or what was the starting from scratch?
It was everything. It was a start-up. So the day that I started at Scottish Edge, CIC, actually Scottish Edge CIC didn't exist. So we had no business, no bank account, no office, no IT, no staff, nothing. So we had the competition and how that would run. And very, very, very fortunately, I had a guy called Stephen Hamill, who I still work very closely with, who is our Chief Operations Officer. And he had been seconded from the bank to Scottish Enterprise to support them in the running of the competition. So seconded from the Royal Bank. And he was continuing to run the competition in the background, even though, and I know this sounds a bit odd, the entity didn't exist yet. So he was still seconded from the bank when I started, but fortunately 6 weeks later left the bank and joined Scottish Edge.
First key hire.
First key hire, very important key hire.
Yeah.
So we were managing to, so it was a bit odd, we had the competition and we were kind of running the competition, and then I was coming in and putting all the structure round about it. Yeah. So that's how it kind of worked.
So just in the background, everyone knew the competition, they knew the rules, all that sort of thing, but then in the background you're just running about like, okay, we don't have that anymore, get something else quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest challenges was that the competition previously had been 100% grant only when it was at Scottish Enterprise. But if you'll remember, my experience was running a revolving loan fund, and the people involved in coming up with the idea, if you like, of Scottish Edge CIC had wanted us to provide loans. So that was one of the challenges, is that, previously it had been 100% grants and we were introducing loans. So one of the first things I had to do, so everyone coming into the competition had been told we were introducing loans, but we still didn't have the loan terms and how that was all going to work. So that was one of the first things I had to do when I come in, is work out, what the interest rate's going to be. Are we going to take any guarantees? What is the actual offer in terms of the length of time that people can repay the funding and all those kind of things. And I look back now and I actually think we did a pretty reasonable job, because we haven't actually changed it.
All right, it was first time,
so
right.
we did get it right, even though at the time we were just like, oh. But the idea was that to create this revolving loan fund, which basically means that every pound we put out, so if we lent to you at Clear Sky Logic, everything you would pay back to us is recycled.
That's great.
So the next person in line gets the opportunity to benefit from the repayments you make. And I think that's a really sort of strong story for people. So we kind of say, it's like, by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs is a bit of a tagline we use, because it's entrepreneurs paying back that helps us to build up the war chest to help the next set of entrepreneurs. And we do make a small amount of interest on these loans, but that's what's used towards the support costs and all the other bits and pieces that we bring to our winners. So that's being funded through the interest that they pay.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea, how it's the paying back of the grant and the loan, sorry. But also you're going out and getting additional funding into the pot, so the momentum will just grow and grow and grow. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. So over the piece, we're trying to do more winners. So we've been fundraising to try and do more. So in the early days, we were maybe doing 12 to 16 Scottish Edge winners. Now we're trying to do 20 with every round and possibly more than that. So we've been boosting the loan pot to try and enable us to support more winners. And also we've continued to get support from Scottish Government. I mean, initially they'd said to us, they gave us a 3-year funding commitment, which is quite unusual with the government. And since then, all the funding has been year to year. But they're still here, this is our 8th year and they're still putting in funding, they're still supporting Scottish Edge, they're still enabling us to give out grants to support our winners, which is fantastic. So.
And what's the ultimate goal with Edge? Is it to help more and more people, or is there big winners that you like to kind of talk about?
Okay, so the ultimate goal is to be a self-sustaining social enterprise. So we're nearly there. Not quite there yet, but almost there. And then the goal, yes, is growth, but at the same time, growth with quality. We want to make sure that, with the best will in the world, we don't want to start just scattering money to lots of different businesses. Although some people would say, well, you're just taking a bit of a risk doing that, and maybe that's the right thing to do. But we feel that the Edge Winners badge is quite highly prized because there is that detailed competition process. There are a few stages you have to go through in order to win that badge. And therefore, we do feel it's important that we continue to put people through that process and make sure that the time is right for them to take that funding on board and go for growth and prove that they can do it. So yes, we want to grow, but we want to grow, provided the base is there for us to invest in.
The thing I was really impressed about was it's not just the funding, it's the support system around it. The judging process itself, we're getting feedback on the business, but also just the people you meet and the people they might introduce you to as a contestant going through. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, you'll know from having been involved in the judging that the judging is as much about the feedback as you can give to each and every applicant as it is to identify those to go to the next stage. So that's about giving value. And that actually comes from Stephen and I, because I remember in the very early days sitting in the first office we had, which was, we borrowed a one-person office from University of Strathclyde. So the two of us managed to fit in there. When we had the third person in there, it started to get a bit
you just all around the one desk.
Yeah. No, we did manage. We had 2 desks and a tiny little table. So fortunately, our first hire was a very petite woman, so she was able to sit around the tiny little table before we got a bigger office. But we were kind of pondering that. What's it going to be like to run an organisation where 90% of the time you're saying no to people? So how do we? How is that going to be for us as individuals, and how is it going to be for them, and how are we seen as something valuable if we're shutting the door on people 90% of the time? So that's where the idea to try and put as much emphasis as possible on the feedback and get as much value from the feedback as possible sort of came about. We thought, right, okay, if we can say, regardless of where you go in this competition, we're going to give you some feedback, we're going to refer you to people. We'll maybe say, go and speak to Clear Sky Logic, or, why don't you attend a food and drink webinar that Johnson Carmichael are running, or sign up for Elevator's Creative Accelerator. If we can give those valuable pieces of feedback that might help people move forward, then everybody gets something out of it, and you're not saying no. You're saying not yet, and here's a little bit of feedback that might help you move you forward.
Yeah, and those introductions can make all the difference when you're at that stage. Right? I mean, when I was starting a business, it was you don't know anyone. You literally don't know anyone. You've probably worked, for an organisation through your career, and you take the plunge with an idea, and then it's kind of meeting one person at a time. But there's a lot of kind of frogs to kiss in that process, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, even being involved as a sponsor at Scottish Edge, even I was meeting people that I wouldn't have met otherwise. I met some of the winners before they became winners, and even looking back on some of the clients we've got at Clear Sky, they're previous Edge winners.
Yes.
So it's that kind of DNA that we're kind of like involved in this kind of connection. So yeah.
I think you'd mentioned, I watched one of the other podcasts, and you'd been talking about the importance of relationships, and in business, and I remember at the very beginning with Stephen and I, our mantra was, right at that stage, it's all about relationships with our clients, keeping the good relationships with our sponsors, because we were very aware of the fact that most of them were only there for the first 3 years. And so if we were going to make Edge a long-term sustainable business, then we had to really work on those relationships and really work on making Edge feel like something that people were part of. So I think, again, going back to the judges, it would be so much easier with us if we just had a set of judges that we just paid every round and they just come in. But instead, bringing on individual judges, okay, that's a big job for Stephen, because he probably recruits around 100 judges with every round. Wow. But then every time you get a judge, if they have a nice experience, and most of them, all of them do actually, then you've got someone that understands Edge, understands the way it works, and can chat to people and can talk to people about judging or about entering into the competition or about supporting the competition. So you're creating this network of relationships through the judges as well.
Yeah. I've caught with a few of the judges outside it. I guess specifically Johnson Carmichael people were really nice. And I guess for me it was, when I got involved, it's like almost reliving the Dragon's Den fantasy. We're like, oh, it'll be just like this. But really going through it, it's like, how do I help these people, right? Okay, well, maybe try this idea a bit more and then feedback, or leave this other idea because I don't think that's where you want to be going. And it's just great to be helping people out, and it's not like a purely charitable, way of thinking or doing something. It's getting back something yourself. It's a reflection of it, being like, oh, I remember when I was at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I personally really enjoy the judging days, and I think the judges do, because you're in a room with some other people and you might have read an application form or looked at an idea and made a certain decision about it, and then you listen to the conversation and people will come in with, oh, I would have considered it from that point of view, and you think, oh, I never thought of that, that's really interesting. So you learn from how people look at things and the different sort of creativity that they bring to the process. So I think that side of it's really interesting as well.
Yeah, it's such a diverse set of ideas and companies. I guess that was one of the struggles I had in the judging process, was trying to get my head around sectors or areas that I just had no knowledge of. Things like we were talking before the podcast about a new computer chip that was being made now, and even though I'm into tech and I'm into digital platforms and mobile apps, the actual hardware of tech was always something that was that's not my bag, sort of thing. So it was quite difficult to judge on that. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, we do get that, and we have a kind of phrase in Scottish Edge. Well, I'll maybe pass on a form to someone and say, that's a 3-read, that form. So you'll need at least 3 reads to try and understand what's actually, so you do get that. I mean, the thing about Edge is, as it's about, we're looking for a point of difference. I mean, we call it innovation, but essentially it's a point of difference. And that runs the gamut from incredibly technical things like new computer chips or retinal scanners or blood tests to detect cancer, right the way through to beautifully branded candles, because the Isle of Skye Candle Company is one of our winners, or gorgeous chocolate, bean to bar chocolate like Beard Bones in chocolate based in Glasgow, which if you've not eaten their chocolate, you really should. But those businesses have got a point of difference as well, and it's really all about that. It's about finding that special something that is going to make that business interesting to consumers, and then enable that business to grow and build a team. Because ultimately, what we're about at Edge is that impact on the Scottish economy, and I think I've got a great team in it. I think everyone is really motivated by that. It's about picking those winners, helping move them forward, and then hearing those lovely stories when they report back and say, oh, that's us up at 10 jobs, or that's us up at 50 jobs. And then you get that really good feeling that you've played a small part in that story and you've helped them create jobs and put a wage in someone's pocket.
Yeah, absolutely taken off. I mean, I've got first-hand experience of that. I was on the board at Fresh Car Valentine, that was a previous winner. And they went from having maybe kind of 12 car valeting vans around Scotland, they're up to about 55. I mean, every week it's going up across the whole UK. And that kind of growth
amazing.
in such a short amount of time. You know, it's been less than Clear Sky's been around. So yeah, within a couple of years, it's incredible.
And I know, it's just lovely to see that kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you're looking at, we're helping winners, Gig DI.
Yes.
So they've got a potentially global platform. Like that,
absolutely,
that
it's very exciting business. So
there's no end to these companies and great innovation just in Scotland from the ground up.
Yeah, and I mean, it was great seeing that report last week about Edinburgh and Glasgow being, I think there's the top 5 cities in the UK to set up a tech business. In Edinburgh and Glasgow are in that top 5, which is fantastic, because also what you realise is that having that ecosystem around where that there'll be people, people will move to those cities knowing that maybe they might take a job with a particular tech business and that doesn't work out, but there's other ones. So we'll be able to attract talent in from elsewhere, as well as the homegrown talent we've got ourselves. So that's very exciting. And I'm also really excited about the big push around renewables, because obviously we see a lot of that in Edge as well. So we've seen a lot of really interesting businesses come through in that space. And I think there is a real opportunity Scotland has at the moment to try and be, one of the leaders in that sector. So it'd be great if we can contribute to that as well. Yeah.
It's almost in Scottish Edge, you've built this kind of innovation engine that just keeps on going and getting bigger and more powerful. And it's really exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, well, I think we're reflecting what's out there, but giving those people an opportunity, having that. I mean, the one thing that we've got that's distinct from so many other organisations, I mean, we're only part of a network of organisations in Scotland that work with businesses. There's a plethora of them, so some fantastic players. There's another competition, Converge, which, supports, university staff and graduates. There's Elevator. There's obviously Business Gateway, Scottish Enterprise. So, we're part of this group. But the one thing we have is, we do have those big chunky sums of money that we can put into businesses. So a lot of those organisations will work with, it's their clients. They will encourage their clients to come into Edge to benefit from that, and then benefit from the other support that we can bring. So it's a bit of a collective effort. We're all sort of chipping in to try and push the economy forward. And we do need to do more, because although our business birth rate has gone up over the last few years, it's still not running at the same level as the rest of the UK. And we're still not getting enough businesses that scale. So that's something that we're constantly talking about. And obviously the government has been talking about a lot, and was reflected in the National Strategy for Economic Transformation that they published last month. So it's how do we create more businesses, and then how do we push those businesses forward to scale and really create big amounts of jobs.
Because it's almost a stage beyond scale up when you start to get to kind of Series B or C, when a lot of the companies that have been located in Scotland maybe have to start going across to the States for funding, or down to London or that sort of thing. And at that point, I guess it becomes a lot more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think funding is an issue in Scotland. I mean, I know that we've had some new players in recently, and obviously we've got some very successful players in the market already. But I do still think it's harder for businesses in Scotland to raise the amounts of money that businesses in London and Cambridge can raise, for example, and the valuations as well. So you can get more money for the same thing. We've seen directly comparable business ideas raising in Scotland and in London, and the difference in terms of the valuation and the amount of cash going in.
Wow. What do you think the difference is? Is it just the networks involved in making decisions?
I think it's just that there are more funders available in that space, and more money in that space than there is up here. So the British Business Bank are very aware of that, and so they're constantly talking talking about that, researching it and looking at different ways to address that. But I mean, it's not just Scotland. Obviously, there's disparities across the whole of the UK, but definitely there definitely exists a disparity in Scotland in terms of the amounts of money you can raise versus other parts of the UK. So that's got to have an impact, I think, on scale, because if you're planning to grow your business and you're having to spend an exponential amount of time on trying to raise the money that you need in order to do that, and you're not able to raise at the level that you actually need to really go for it, that's going to have an impact. It's going to have an impact.
Especially when you get to scaling globally. There's not a cheap way to do it, right? Like you need to have the funding to get there.
And then I think what we need, the thing is we also probably need organisations outside of Scotland to invest in Scotland. But there definitely are geographical limitations to that. So if you're sitting, so people will talk about, I'm going to go and raise money in Silicon Valley. But if you're sitting in Silicon Valley, are you going to invest in a business in Scotland? Because it's going to take you 14 hours to fly here. So you do need them to be making that risk, taking that first investment. Once there's one, then they're more likely to look at the second one and the third one, because then there's it's then not just one trip, you can go over and see 2 or 3 or whatever. So it's just getting people initially to come in and start investing in those companies.
Yeah.
So, obviously we do have examples of that, but more would be good.
Yeah, and as we become, I guess we've always been known as an innovative country, but I think even more and more now we're focusing on that. The calibre of talent coming out of universities is better than ever, and we've got lots of other ways that people get into the tech industry that aren't from university, things like Code Clan. So we've definitely seen a term recently called Scot shoring.
What was that?
Scot shoring.
Right, okay.
So companies that looking to outsource their technology and their platform builds, things that Clear Sky do, to Scotland rather than elsewhere in the world, because we're being seen as not cheap, but a reasonable cost, exceptional quality. And I can definitely see that when we're hiring out there.
I love that.
Yeah, Scot shoring. It's the drawing an investment to Scotland.
That's great.
But it makes sense for a lot of reasons. Some of the universities, Edinburgh and Glasgow, kind of world renowned. Dundee as well. We're getting up there. How have you seen the entrepreneurial spirit coming through in Edge? Is that something that you've seen being fanning the flames of entrepreneurial spirit before they get to Edge? How are you finding people that are kind of getting that? Because for me, when starting Clear Sky, I didn't wake up one day thinking I want to own a business. At school, there was nothing about owning businesses or running businesses. It was nothing like that. But more and more now, you're seeing people, okay, well, I want to start my own thing. I want my own flexibility to do my own thing. I think I can do it better than anyone else. So fanning the entrepreneurial spirit in people, obviously there's Young Edge, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It's a great way to give people just a bit of backing to help them on their way. But are you seeing a lot of kind of that entrepreneurial spirit come through in the earlier stages?
Yes, but I do think much more needs to be done in schools. And there are some fantastic organisations working in schools like Young Enterprise Scotland, but I still think that at school you're still being encouraged to become an accountant, a lawyer and a doctor. Okay, there's a small amount of people are now being pushed towards tech, and I'm thinking, how has that not changed since I was at school? And I still think there isn't enough mention of either working in small businesses or setting up small businesses of your own. There's still more needs to be done. So actually, alongside Young Enterprise Scotland, we're currently trying to develop a kind of double period school lesson that we're going to offer to schools. Is instead of putting a video on when the teacher's phoned in sick, or there's something going on at the school and you've not got cover for this class, could you stick on this double period lesson which is all about entrepreneurship? So we're working on that at the moment, and there's going to be 3 parts to the lesson. The first part is telling the story of, talking about Scotland's entrepreneurial history and about businesses in Scotland today and how important they are in Scotland, telling the story of 2 entrepreneurs from start-up through to where they are now. Then there's going to be a little bit where you get to judge a couple of businesses that are pitching at the Edge final, so there'll be little worksheets. There'll be worksheets all the way through it to make it engaging.
Yeah.
And then it finishes with what it's like to work in a small business, the differences between working in a small business and a large business, and why it's actually attractive to work for a small business. Mm-hmm. And it's just trying to get the school children that engage with the lesson to think beyond big employers and big business and you know, just that sort of straight to university thing that we seem to have got stuck in over the years in Scotland. So how it's going to go, I'm not entirely sure. We're still in the middle of pulling it together. Mm-hmm. And then we'll need to work with lots of different organisations to try to get schools to use it. So I think, we do need to be doing more to encourage young people to even just know about small businesses. Mm-hmm. You know, I think there just isn't enough. You know, why isn't it a subject in school?
Yeah, strange, right? We did absolutely nothing. I guess when I was at school, it was you had, the closest thing to it would be business admin. So you got to learn how to use Microsoft Word and that sort of thing. Yeah,
but even a business management hire. So both my kids obviously did business management hires, and you know, obviously I had a look through the papers and the curriculum and the questions, and it was all about big business.
Yeah,
it was all about big business.
It's incredible.
So
right?
yeah.
And it's never been a better time to start your own thing or give it a shot, or you know, especially when you're younger. Like you're looking back, I didn't start my business till I was, I think, 30, 31-ish.
Yep.
But you know, if you're in your 20s at uni, you've got nothing to lose really. You know, giving it a shot. If you're passionate about something, you think it'll work, then
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they do say that you can set up a business much cheaper than you used to do. So years ago, you had many more issues. You had to be in an office, and IT was expensive because of servers and so on. And now actually there's an awful lot that you can do very cheaply. So that opportunity to try something out quite cheaply exists now as well. So yeah, we should definitely be doing more in that space. But in terms of, but what's lovely for us is that we do have hundreds of people literally approach us every round. And you never know until you start getting into it what's actually in the application forms. But always we go through it and we're just like, wow, wow. Yeah. You know, it's amazing, the ideas and the people that are out there, and you know, the difference that they want to make with that idea. So yeah, entrepreneurial spirit is live and well in Scotland. Just need to do a little bit more to encourage it when people are younger, I think.
Yeah, so giving a bit of guidance and knowing what's possible, you know, let them dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think things like case studies are really important. Telling stories. I mean, you talking about Fresh Car Care and talking about Uni, the pizza oven business, and even TV Squared, the tech business that's just exited in Edinburgh. We need to talk a bit more about these things. You know, they need to be bigger stories than they are, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in terms of the future for Scottish Edge, what else do you think you'll be doing? What will you be doing differently, you know, in the next year as opposed to this year? Is there anything in the works?
Well, we work quite closely with, one of our team members runs the Scale Up Scotland programme, which is funded by Scottish Government and Hunter Foundation. So at the moment we do push Edge winners who are scaling up onto that programme. We encourage them to go onto that programme, but we also take other just scale up businesses in general. So we're looking to up that programme a bit. So at the moment we've been running one cohort at a time, and each cohort runs for 18 months, and that's been up to 20 businesses on that cohort. But I think our plans are that the next two cohorts will run at the same time, so that's basically space for up to 40 businesses. Oh. And we're looking at also having a sort of slightly different version of that for even bigger businesses, actually. So there's a real focus on scale. So it's back to that, you know, can we get the good businesses that we're working with and push them towards scale through. Essentially, the Scale Up Scotland programme gives people access to experts that can talk to them about the different things that they need to take into account as they're pushing their business forward. And those really exciting speakers and interesting speakers that can help them put the foundations in place from which to scale their business. So a lot more going on with that. Within Scottish Edge, it is, pushing forward for more winners. So we've been fundraising a lot recently. Last year, we were lucky enough to bring in £1 million worth of funding from a group of 6 entrepreneurs. Wow. So we had Lord and Lady Hockey, Sir Tom Hunter, James Watt at Brewdog, Kevin Doran at Parsley Box, Chris and Paddy at Chroma Ventures or 4G Studios, and then Brian Souter from Stagecoach. So they all got together and chipped £1 million into Edge to enable us to increase the number of winners. And we're currently bringing other people into that group. So again, it's just fundraising at the moment to ensure that we've got the funding to enable us to support more winners, and then looking to help those businesses push them forward and give them the scale-up programme as a route from which to grow.
And the thing that excites me about that funding, on a personal level, it's obviously you're helping that round, but also it's the loans coming back in, that funding doesn't just help one round, it'll come back in and it'll help more businesses in future.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, we bring in about £1 million a year in repayments, and so that helps build up that treasure chest, if you like, in between rounds. But we've also got the Edge Pledge, which was an initiative we introduced a few years ago, which is where our winners pledge to give 1% of their personal proceeds on exit. So it doesn't sit on the cap table, so it doesn't get in the way of the business, it doesn't affect other investors, it's just a personal thing. It's not really legally binding, but we are getting some funding back from pledges now with people coming out of businesses and putting funding into Scottish Edge, and we're able to revolve that as well. So we've got 3 pledges in TV Squared, so we're just waiting until they've gone through all the legals, and then we'll see what that brings us.
Fantastic.
So that's exciting. Idea. So ultimately, we'd hope that through the pledges, we will eventually be, the entrepreneurs that have come through Edge will be helping to fund Edge as we move forward, which will be a lovely place to be. And then we truly are, by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs when we get to that stage. That will be lovely.
Yeah, what a great success story that would be, right?
Yeah, it'd be great.
I wonder how many jobs have been created through Scottish Edge and the businesses that are involved in it up to now,
Oh, well, we do know that because we have a stab at that because we collect information. So it's sitting at around 2,800 jobs that have been created. But I mean, and there's a few organisations we know are big employers in that space. So, for example, TV Squared, we know we're up to 100 jobs. Uni are up to 300 jobs, although not all of those in Scotland. So some of the businesses have done extremely well. Beer 52, I think they're at around 80 jobs. So there's some of the businesses have really created a lot, which is exciting.
And the thing that excites me about that is the kind of calibre of the jobs. So for example, a lot of startups and scale-ups, people get a chance to do a job that maybe wouldn't have in a bigger company. Things like marketing or sales or even tech, development, that sort of thing. And they get into these companies that kind of start up, scale up, and learn the trade and be part of that, and then that affects their careers for the rest of their lives. So it might be a number of jobs now, but the impact on people's lives could be absolutely massive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the little podcast, the school lesson, we've got some young people talking about what it's like to work in small companies, and they're saying that it's that opportunity to do things. You're not in a little box, a little cog in the wheel. You can be in your job and maybe you're not. There's something comes up and you're the only person that can do that day, so you then get a chance to do something you wouldn't ordinarily, and that can maybe take you in a different direction. So it's all those opportunities you get with small businesses where everybody needs to muck together and make it work.
Yeah, and they often grow with the company.
Yes.
They maybe start off doing dabbling in a bit of marketing, and all of a sudden they're leading marketing for
that's right. They've got a team of 10 or something, which is great.
It's great to see people go through the journey, and then the effects that has on families and money and all that sort of thing that helps day to day. I mean, we've seen a lot of that in Clear Sky. I mean, we're up to about 25, 30 people now. But over the years, we've brought people on that maybe didn't have the experience, but had the right attitude, and they wanted to learn, and maybe not be in a call centre day in day. They want to learn how to build tech, and so that's one of the best bits about being able to bring people on in a company. But you see a lot of that with Scottish Edge winners as well.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I guess we talked a lot about Scottish Edge, but not really too much about you, about what you're looking to do next. Are you going to continue CEO role? What gets you up in the morning now?
Well, Edge is a brilliant job. And I mean, lots of people say that to me, you've got such a great job. I do. It's endlessly interesting, because we've obviously built up, we've got a fair amount of alumni now. We're not that much short of 500 businesses that we've supported. And I think around 440 of those are still trading. So you can look out across a massive range of individuals and organisations that have been supported through Edge. And we do keep in touch with all our alumni. So once you win Edge, it's not a case of we'll keep an eye on you for 2 years and then you knock off, you fall off at the end. We still continue to keep in touch with winners from round one, right the way through, obviously, to ones that won just in December. So you've got all of that going on, and then of course every 6 months we have a couple of hundred brand new ideas come in. So it's an endlessly interesting job. But for me personally, when I got involved at Edge, I did want to make it a long-term self-sustaining organisation. So that's my personal goal, is that I didn't want it to be, as I say, back to that thing at the beginning, Stephen and I were told, you've got 3 years, you've got enough funding for 3 years, see what happens after that.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about, I would love to get to the stage where if I am passing it on to someone else, I'm passing it on as a self-sustaining organisation that they can then take forward and bring their own ideas into. So and I'm not too far away. Not too far away from that now.
It's great to have that clarity, being like, that's my goal, and all the decisions around it. That's the goal to get there.
Of course, at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm sure we were all the same. I was just thinking, I've built this up, and it's all, you just felt the whole thing was going to crumble. Because at the beginning of the pandemic, before any of the government support kicked in, I was just terrified that all of our businesses were going to cease trading. We would lose all of our loan funds, and we would struggle to keep on going and to get back up again. But everybody felt the same in those first few weeks. I think we all...
There's never been a better time to build resilience in your character.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember at the time, my business partner Phil and I would just look at each other and went, what do we do? We're like, I think we're fine. We can probably do this from home, and we think our clients will stay in business. We think, and hold on for a bit, and then it worked itself out. And I think a lot of the businesses that have made it through, I mean, I obviously feel bad for everyone that didn't make it through. Not everyone did, but people that did make it through are hopefully going to be in a stronger position going forward. And that resilience thing will keep you going.
Well, at least let's face it though, businesses are going to have to be very resilient this year as well. It's probably just as well they cut their teeth on the pandemic, because this is going to be a tough year. Yeah. I mean, we're looking out seeing, obviously staff challenges in terms of costs going up, so needing to increase the salaries for staff, costs in general going up, obviously the fuel costs, supply costs, logistics costs, component costs, everything. And then that on the top of pandemic support loans kicking in, it's a bit of a perfect storm. So I think this is going to be a difficult year.
With a potential looming recession.
Yeah, because I think the thing is, as well, is all of this is going to lead to consumer confidence going down and fewer people spending. And as soon as that happens, then that's going to directly affect people's turnover. So on top of rising costs, you're going to have potentially in certain sectors reducing turnover. So I do think this is going to be a tough year. So sorry, didn't want to.
No.
shouldn't have finished on a low. But
it's difficult, right?
one thing that we did see is how incredibly resilient businesses are during the pandemic. So we're just hoping that they've still got those reserves, and having got themselves through the pandemic, they'll get themselves through what I think will be a difficult year for all of us this year. Yeah.
I mean, certainly, first-hand experience. Never been a more difficult time to hire. Never been. Obviously, wages have increased dramatically with inflation, but just there's not a lot of people out there now. And, it'll be interesting to see how businesses that are at scale up manage that, because it's really difficult, right? You need really good people, or at least people with really good potential But if they're just not on the market, it's so tough to get going without the right people.
No, it is incredibly difficult to hire. We actually hired at Edge recently, and I got 4 applications for the role, and I was told that was a good result.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what? So, but it's just because, there's nobody out there.
Yeah.
So,
We'll see how that goes, right? But it's not good.
No, that's a few challenges ahead.
Yeah.
Just need to grit our teeth again.
Get through it. So I guess I guess 2 different things. If I've got a really good idea, start up business, scaling up business, and I like the sound of Scottish Edge, then what do I do? How do I get in touch, or what do I need to know?
Yeah, so the key thing is if you go onto the website, we've got a lot of resources and materials about coming into the competition, but we've also got our contact details. So we say get in touch with us, set up a call, set up a Teams or Zoom, and we'll chat to you about it, and we'll talk you through the process. We'll put you on our mailing list, and then as soon as we go live, then we'll get in touch with you, let you know that the call is now open, and give you an opportunity to attend a workshop where we talk through all aspects of going through Edge and different hints and tips as to how to be successful in the competition.
So they get that support kind of up front, not just here's a big application form, good luck, and
yes,
we hope you answer.
No, we give that support up front. And actually one of the things we're working on just now is we're doing a sort of a reboot of our application form to try and make it clearer and easier for people to go through, because we recognise that it is a challenge. So how do we make it as straightforward for businesses as possible? So that's actually something we're running in the background while we're working through this round as well.
Great. And say if I'm I've recently exited a business, or I'm a big time investor, I love the sound of Scottish Edge, the innovation that's coming through, that kind of continual cycle of more and more companies getting through. How would I get in touch about providing some sort of funding or getting involved?
Oh, great question. Well, the key thing I say is get in touch with us, and probably what we would do is invite the person to come along to the final, which I know you'll be there, and also to probably join one of our judging panels actually. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's the initial thing we would do, is come along to the final, watch the businesses, get involved in the judging, and then you can see not just the types of businesses that come in, but how we run the competition, get to know a little bit about what happens behind the scenes. And then after that, we could chat about how to move it forward. But I think that, hopefully just by coming along to the final, by engaging with the judging, people would see how interesting it is and how lovely it is to be able to support these businesses and try and move them forward.
Yeah. Can you just imagine little light bulbs going off? I could introduce them to that person that I know,
and
this other
we've
person.
got all of that to benefit from as well. Absolutely.
Fantastic. No, I look forward to a successful future for Edge and all the companies involved.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me, and thanks for being one of our Scottish Edge partners.
Absolutely.
We're enjoying working with you.
Delighted to be involved.
Great.